would probably pick manufacturing consent, because on his political side rather than his linguistic side, that's sort of his seminal work on democracy and corporate elite power in the Western world. Ridley Walker by Russell Holden, I believe the name is. I think it was written in about 83, but Dave lent it to me about half a year ago, and I just completely loved it. It's quite a fantastical tale, and the lead fellow, it takes place in perhaps a future planet Earth, but you can't really be sure. But it's not really sci-fi, it's much more about the lead character, Ridley Walker, and he lives in this really bizarre landscape, and he has to kind of find his place as a storyteller and where to go.
Neuromancer, that's a great book. If you want an exciting, fast, quick, up-to-the-minute, fast-paced read with an interesting insight into what the main commodity of the future might be, in this case, computer chips and information and communications gear, and it's about cowboys trying to steal each other's computer gear, and it's really...
It's time for us to get intimate and interactive with a political leader. Now, as always with our I&Is, we have a live audience here made up largely of first-time voters. We're also going to be opening up our fax and phone lines so that you can be a part of the show. And, as always with our I&Is, we have musical guests. So, please help me in welcoming, this time rockin' and talkin' from Moxy Fruvous, Dion Gomesi. Moxy Fruvous is one of 1993's most successful Canadian bands, and they asked the question, are we stuck in the 90s on their platinum selling? Very close to platinum, yeah?
Yes.
Very, very close to platinum debut album, On We Are. Now, Leon, you're going to be asking that and so much more of our political guests tonight.
That and so much more.
Okay, please help me in welcoming the very first woman to lead a political party in this country, the Honorable Audrey McLaughlin of the New Democratic Party of Canada. Okay, I'll tell you what, while you two get settled into the hot seats tonight, we're going to go back outside to Adelaide.
Okay, well, Audrey is sitting down and putting her mic on. We're going to give you a little bit of background. Here's the pregame stats on Audrey McLaughlin and the NDP.
Woman to captain a Canadian team, Audrey was called up to the show as the MP from Yukon in 1987. Before she went to the Hill, Audrey was a meat farmer in Ontario, taught English in West Africa, and worked in mental health in Toronto. As leader of the NDP, she plays left field. She's promised to strike out the GST and the free trade agreement. But she's got trouble on the field this season. Her farm teams, the provincial NDP, are throwing curveballs and sinkers just a bit outside. And try as she might to hide them in the dugouts, they just may dash her hopes in the National League. Watch her 43 players closely. There may be a lot of trades after October 25th.
Hey, ready to go. Good. Are you exhausted?
No.
You're not exhausted?
I'm at the Madonna concert, are they? No. Isn't that it? No.
Two-thirds of the way through the campaign.
All right.
I want to start by asking about you, quasi-personal question. You said in your book, on one place, that you're certainly not a politician of the old school, and that, quote, a woman like me seldom gets far in politics. Now there's an unlikely story. And you have a fascinating personal history where you were a single mother in Ontario. You were working as an aid worker in third world countries. Then you sold everything. You packed up in a truck. You drove to the Yukon. You decided to live in the Yukon. It's not exactly. And then you signed yourself running for office. Not exactly the regular political climb up.
Not the regular.
In this election, if anyone has come across as sort of with an image of the person of the people. And the non-politician is Preston Manning, who, of course, has a family with quite a political history. Do you find this, is this difficult for you? Do you find that ironic?
Well, the truth, I've never thought about it. I think it's, I look at my own life, as you said, I've had a lot of great opportunities, canoeing down the Amazon and traveling around South America and doing a number of things, working in different countries, living in Africa, had 4 or 5 careers.
And I think that's really been good preparation for politics. So it wasn't political life, but it was a great preparation for political life, I think.
But do you feel at all that that somehow you can't get your end across as a non-politician? I mean, you're considered the leader of one of the three old parties, which doesn't reflect your history. Is that's not frustrating for you? Or
well, I guess. Well, I mean, I think it is hard to get across who you are as a person, and that is really difficult. I mean, it's not, politics isn't and shouldn't be all about who you are as a person. It should be what you stand for. But part of who you are is why you stand for what you do, and I guess it's hard. And I always feel too, you know, that politics should be about policies, and I don't know if people are particularly interested in my personal life, except as it relates to how you do politics. And my life, I think, does really relate to that.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about you, and specifically the big debate, the English language debate. And I know
the big one was the French language debate for me.
Okay, yeah. But they're both quite big, but I mean, this is supposed to be the pinnacle of the campaign, and you, once again, in your book, you talk about how the 1988 election was really focused once this debate happened and the media lunged on to John Turner and Brian Mulroney. And I thought it was quite interesting that, at least in the Toronto press, but I heard this happen across the country. The day after the debate last week, Robert Shepard in the Globe and Mail, Richard Gwynn in the Toronto Star, Fred Thompson in the Toronto Sun, all either alluded to or said that you won. That Arjun McLaughlin spoke the best, he kept it cool, he won the debate. And yet a week later, if we look at the polls, there's been very little change. It's still a dismal 8%. And do you feel it was, in this case, has the anti-NDP or has the party allegiances for each party just been too rigid by the time of the debate that even if you did have a good debate, it didn't make a difference?
It's very hard to say. I think the debate, though, was very much unlike 1988. First of all, there were 5 parties, and it really makes a very different dynamic when you have 5 people. When I debated Preston Manning a year and a half or so ago, that was much easier in some ways because there were 2 people you could really debate back and forth. With 5 people, you're just trying to see if you can get in and say something and be a constructive part of it. So I think the debate was fine, but I don't think for any party it changed much, quite frankly.
But, well, I guess what I'm getting at is what's going on? Why is the NDP at 8%?
I think there's a number of reasons, but what is curious and in some ways really ironic, that people who are absolutely angry and frustrated, and that's most of Canadians, I think, of any age, are angry and frustrated with the Conservative government did. And to some extent, they're looking to parties that are even more right-wing than the Conservative government who wants to do the same thing faster. And that is curious, I think.
Well, why is that? Why don't they see you as
Well, I'm not sure. And a lot of people do. And, we put a lot of issues on the agenda in this election that I'm proud got there because they wouldn't have if we hadn't. And one was Medicare and social programs and education and so on that became election issues, particularly the Medicare issue. I think it's hard to say. The election's not over yet, of course, so we'll see what happens with the final results. But I still remain very committed to the fact that the issues we brought up are really important. I think there's a large group of Canadians that really want to see someone in there who still cares about those kinds of issues. Who cares that there's poverty on the street and that there's homeless and wants to do something about it.
But you talked about anger and disillusionment. And I want to tap into what, I want to suggest one of the reasons why the NDP is so low on the polls. And it has specifically to do with the Ontario experience. And I feel like I can talk about it because I live here and I've experienced it myself. And many of us felt a tremendous euphoria and excitement in 1990 when the Ray government was elected. I don't even think it was just NDP followers. I think there was a sense that this is a big change, that, it's a progressive change. 3 years later, there's broken promises, there's moving against policy, there's an austerity program of deficit reduction, which frankly mirrors the Tories and the Reform Party, which you've been attacking. And I guess what I want to know is, since what the Ray government has been doing seems so different from what I would consider a traditional NDP campaign that you've been running, why have you not stood up once in the last couple of years, or even today, and said, I fundamentally, explicitly oppose the direction of the Ray government, and you can look to the national NDP to be different.
Well, I fundamentally oppose certain things. I oppose Bill 48 and what was the outcome of that. But I don't fundamentally oppose the fact that the Ontario government put in anti-scab legislation, put in more public housing, and invested in childcare. So I'm not prepared to make a blanket statement. There are certain things that I disagree with, and I'll be honest about those. But I agree with you. If there is a certain factor of people feeling their expectations weren't met.
Well, I want to keep with this for a second, because we're talking about a government in Ontario that seems like myopically dealing with deficit reduction. This is the top priority, and you've been talking about what is our top priority as a social programs as a deficit, and you've been saying, we've got to deal with jobs, we've got to deal with. And I'm just a little bit confused as a former NDP follower and activist. Why I should vote for you, like why I should believe you with respect. I mean, because we're looking at these, and I think if we ask people out there, there's a lot of people, and you look at the 20% traditional NDP vote, who are extremely disillusioned and extremely angry, and are looking for you to offer some sort of that you are different. Why? How do I know I'm not voting for Bob Ray again?
Well, I think, first of all, a federal government does very different things than a provincial government in terms of the powers that they have. I mean, no provincial premier signed a trade deal that's cost the country and specifically Ontario a lot of jobs. But having said that, I think your question is legitimate. And what I want to say is I ask people to judge me on my record. When the Gulf War was on, we stood up against the Gulf War. That wasn't popular in the polls. We didn't do it because it would be popular. We took stands that we felt were good for Canada, and we're still opposed to NAFTA and the Canada-U.S. trade deal. The Liberal Party's backed off because we really believe that. And when we're in the House of Commons, those are the things that we're going to fight for. And I understand your point.
Can you fight for them?
Absolutely.
Or do you have to deal with the deficit?
Well,
that's what Bob Ray.
But you can't deal with the deficit if you have an increasing unemployment rate. It's impossible. And if you look at what's happening, the Tory government isn't dealing with the deficit either, because in fact the revenues are down because nobody has a job.
Right.
And it's far too high, the unemployment rate. So you can't say one or the other.
No, I don't think you can either. But what I am saying is we're on the nation's music station. There's a lot of young people watching, a lot of people who are probably very concerned about post-secondary education, concerned about tuition going up, concerned about their accessibility to university or college, and who have seen the cutbacks from the Ontario government to post-secondary education, who've seen their tuition rise here, and following in BC and Saskatchewan. I want you to speak to them tonight.
Well, what I want to say is speak to what a federal government does and has done. I mean, what we've seen the Conservative government do in the last 9 years is to cut radically back on both health care transfer payments to provinces and territories and post-secondary education. And if we don't have a federal government in Ottawa that really believes it has a vision of education in this country, and we don't, then we aren't going to have that participation. And so every province is left with the results of that. We need a government in Ottawa who believes that we can have some vision of education that means that education isn't just a privilege of those who are rich, because that's the way we're going back to.
Because the transfer payments have passed on to the province.
Have been, the decreases have been passed on to the province in the billions of dollars. I mean, in healthcare, since '84, the Tories have cut $8 million a day. It's a lot of money. And it's very comparable in post-secondary education. So, I'm not sort of rationalizing what provinces do. I'm not the apologist. We have Bob Ray on. He can talk to you about what his programs are. But what I want to say is that unless you have a federal government that really has a vision of these issues, you're not going to have any change. And right now we don't.
You mentioned Scotcha. You mentioned North American Free Trade Agreement. And this is something that from very early on and before this campaign, it seems like this was going to be the banner issue. I've got a Canadian forum here where you're on the front sort of, this is Audrey's big issue. And with the free trade being the last issue, there was some talk that the Democrats hadn't grasped the free trade issue. So it seemed like you came into this campaign really talking about NAFTA, really the only one talking about NAFTA and the effect it's going to have on workers. You tried to bring it up in the debate. Yet, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like it's stimulating anybody out there. The polls show that people aren't that interested in NAFTA. Nobody else really talked about it in the debate. And even you now are talking about social programs and cuts to Medicare, and seem to have shifted your focus from NAFTA The free trade agreement, is it a fait accompli? Is it irrelevant to people now?
No, I don't think it is. I think people aren't sure what we can do, but I don't think it's irrelevant. I mean, in different regions of the country, it's very strong. It's quite strong in Ontario. I mean, a lot of people are very concerned. They've seen their job go south. They've seen the results. And when you talk about social programs, what we've done is make the link between NAFTA and the Canada-U.S. trade deal that allows for privatization of hospital delivery services and really has undermined our social programs, from unemployment insurance. What have we seen since '88? More cutbacks in education, more cutbacks in health care, changes to the unemployment insurance system. We really punish the unemployed instead of attacking unemployment. And so it is a very real issue. I would agree with you, however, if you look at a poll, it's not very high up there. But I think that people should be concerned because it will have, it really is the economic constitution of Canada. It restructures fundamentally many parts of what the future, most people watching this program will
It's as important as, virtually as important as the free trade agreement, which...
Sure. Well, it's just a continuation.
So why isn't it a big issue? Is somebody setting the agenda?
Well, obviously the other parties don't want to talk about it. The Liberals have backed off. It was the fight of their life. Now they've backed off on that. So they are going to proceed as it is. The Tories, of course, their program, so they're going to. Preston Manning supports the trade deal. I mean, these are the parties that work in the corporate interest. I mean, this is who the trade deal benefits. Certainly not going to benefit people in this room, and it's not going to benefit anyone else but the multinational corporations.
Does this mean we're finished, or what does that mean? Wasn't just
It doesn't mean we don't like NAFTA. I mean, that means we don't like NAFTA, right? That's certainly.
Audrey McLaughlin doing the interviewing, the interviewers instead of the interviewee, the usually on the microenvironment. Jan Gomesi from Moxy Fruvous. And the show is called Intimate and Interactive. Interactive is where you come in. On your screen, you will see a fax number and a phone number. We urge you to fire your questions to us. We are live on the air. So grab your fax machine, grab your phone, and let us know what you think of what's happening here. We're also going to open up the floor to jobs.
Job. Education. Jobs. Ending NAFTA.
Well, get out.
Get back to
Get out.
jobs.
Social programs. Getting MBTA.
The truth.
I'm cutting it off right there. I'm cutting it off right there. I'm sorry. When we get to the plant, the show is over.
We want to thank you for joining us, everybody, and we want to tell you that in the next coming weeks, Moxy Tickets Intimate and Interactive with Kim Campbell, Jean Chrétien, Chris Lee, and Mel Hurtig.
And don't forget tomorrow night, the Libertarian Party, big one, Hillwood Cost. Tomorrow night.
Audrey, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Let's hear it for Audrey.
Thanks for stealing my mic.
Daydream from heaven, picked up the headline, his country was made up of humanity, and no more right wingers. Wakes up to homeless are stupid, welfare is stupid, private investment efficiency, cool fiscal planning. Sounds like more power to get in.
I am part of the code. Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of hard. How do you respond to that?
Yeah. Like you say,
You were saying, give me a reason to vote any team. You said, well, I do oppose this contract.
I thought that was, I mean,
Now, why you wanted to end the show on this song? This is your choice.
I'm a fan of Moxy Fruvous, first of all. But secondly, second the 90s sort of seems like things look kind of bleak. And I think we can have a lot of hope. It's a